Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I guess we could call this Tuesday messages because I'm recording this on Tuesday instead of Sunday. I apologize for the delay. Life had other plans for me this week, so I wasn't able to get this out on time, but here we are. So we're just going to roll with it. And this week's topic, just wrapping up the month of February and all of the relationship topics, I figured we should wrap up by discussing breakups because this is probably one of the most common things that people come to me for. How do I deal with this breakup? How do I get over this person? How do I let go of this soulmate? Blah, blah, blah. And so we are going to talk about all of that. Now, I've mentioned in previous episodes regarding this topic that one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that if you are in a relationship where the container no longer allows you to grow, as in the container of the relationship and connection, if that for any reason stops allowing each person to evolve within that container, that's a big red flag. And while there are a lot of people who continue to stay within the relationship, even if the dysfunctional loop still exists and that's still there, a lot of the time this is actually what causes a breakup to begin with, is that the relationship can no longer evolve or the people inside of it can no longer evolve. And that's ultimately what a lot of people leave relationships for, even if it's on good terms. Like, you can even experience that with people who you love and adore, and, maybe you had big plans with them. But a lot of the time, if you kind of come to a fork in the road and you realize that you are growing in different directions or the container no longer supports the direction that you want to go, this is where people usually make the decision to end the relationship, or they fight and scrap their way to keep the relationship going until it can't anymore. And that's one of the things that I see really, really often. And then you have instances of really big ruptures, big betrayals, big situations like adultery. Those types of situations are a whole other monster. And that's something that is very difficult to bounce back from or repair. And so a lot of the time, the container will simply fall apart as a result of a massive rupture, whatever that looks like. It can take many different forms, but, adultery is usually the one that comes up for people most of the time. So each relationship that you experience, no matter what type or how long the duration is or what the quality of it is, relationships are ideal for growth, healing, wisdom, understanding, including the bad ones, including the dysfunctional ones. Sometimes people go through relationships that are of a similar quality and tone time and time and time again, because for some reason that spirit, for any number of reasons, might need a repetitive cycle until they wake up. Not everyone wakes up to the pattern that's existing or the dysfunction that they're manifesting in relationships. I mean that more from not like it's their fault, but a lot of the time, if you notice that you're going into toxic relationship, you end up becoming the only common denominator, where the transformation of what you are attracted to and tolerate is what needs to evolve in order for that pattern to break. And so sometimes they have to essentially touch the hot stove 15 times before they wake up and realize, oh, this actually isn't good for me. So there are many things like that where the pattern might seem like absolute madness, but for whatever reason that, is a little bit beyond the veil, there's wisdom that needs to come from that experience. And I've said this before, but when there's something that is true for you, God will remind you. So, for example, if you're doing something that isn't good for you and it has negative consequences, God will give it to you again and again and again and again and again until you listen. That is just the way it is. And it sucks, but I see this all the time in relationships where people are not evolving or they're not listening to the data that they're getting from the pattern. And so they get the pattern again and again and again and again. And it does feel maddening. But when you confront different things like that, or if you are dealing with a pattern, there is a lot of empowerment in that, because if you recognize the pattern, then you can say, okay, what is it that I'm doing? If I'm the common denominator, then what needs to evolve within myself in order to stop the pattern? And that's really where things transform. So this isn't to say like anyone's to blame, but ultimately when it comes to patterns and dysfunctions in relationships, right? If you're getting into relationships and then breaking up for the same reason, or you're having the same dysfunction time and time again, by taking the power back, taking responsibility for what exactly is going on and how you can either heal, adjust, listen to the red flags when they're shown to you, the sooner you can listen to the feedback, the sooner you can trust the feedback that you're getting from God or universe, whatever you work with, the faster you'll be able to move through it. But the less you listen, the harder things are going to get a lot of the time. Like the relationships are going to become stickier. They're going to become more complicated. The wounding is going to get inflamed more. That's typically what I see. When you stop listening to what feedback you're getting, again, God is going to start saying, okay, are you still not listening? Are you still not listening? Well, maybe I need to get a little bit louder, and you need to get a little bit more uncomfortable so you can actually hear me and do what you need to do in order to evolve, right? Because the universe, God, is always going to push us to evolve and grow. Always, 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 always. That's a part of the deal. Now, I don't want you to listen to this and say, oh my God, with all of this evolution, how am I ever going to be in a healthy, long-term committed partnership, right? If that's really something that you're desiring. Like if you want a monogamous, committed, long-term relationship, it is something where you can absolutely grow within the container, right? You can create a relationship where it is something that you evolve in throughout a lifetime. That is possible. I'm not saying that, all good things are going to inevitably bottom out. That's not the way this works. But for those of you who are experiencing patterns that are really repetitive in nature and in quality, that is a push for you to grow, which is why you might have to have these breakups happen time and time again in order to get the message and push yourself to evolve. The same goes for if you started with really dysfunctional relationships, but you're evolving out of that. It might take a few breakups in order for you to evolve into a healthy container and evolve into something that is the highest caliber possible for you in this lifetime, which is what, we could say the long-term life partnership is really about. It's about a sustainable container, someone you can grow and evolve with, which is really what is most conducive to a healthy partnership, which is how it becomes more durable and we're able to stay in them long term. Let me just say that relationships are complicated and they're frustrating because there are never any guarantees, which is what makes them so terrifying. Anytime you get into a relationship or you make a commitment and you're dealing with matters of the heart, there's always risk. Relationship and risk are married. Always. Always. Every single one. The relationships with your friends, the relationships with your partners. There's always going to be risk whenever the heart is involved. And this is something that, some people avoid like the plague. I have a tendency to live in that camp. It's very hard for me to get out of it, but that's my work to do in this lifetime. That's how I'm evolving into healthy partnership, right? And then there's other people who don't protect their heart at all, dive headfirst every time something good is even placed in front of them, and they're constantly getting hurt, right? And there's everything in between. But at the end of the day, the goodness that we get to experience from relationships a lot of the time is worth it. That's why people do get into relationships. That's why partnership is one of the highly desirable things that people pursue. And there's a lot of wonderful reasons to get into relationships. So it's a bittersweet thing, right? Like, relationships can be so yummy and so beautiful and so wonderful, and there is so much goodness to experience and so much joy, so much pleasure, so much wonder that we get to tap into. And in the same breath, there's no way for us to cling on so tightly and say, don't you dare ever leave me. For the love of God, it's going to kill me. You know, there's simply no way to force that, which is what makes it so terrifying. And that's also what makes breakups so hard when, you know, a container is no longer beneficial for the people inside of it, and it does have to come to an end, or you do evolve out of the relationship, or there is someone better on the horizon. All of this stuff is painful, because just as much as there's beauty, joy, and reasons to celebrate relationships, there's just as many reasons to grieve them and needing to move on from them. And again, you guys know that I'm like a duality nerd. Like, this is just the reality of the human experience. And without the bittersweet nature of relationships, we simply, you either have to have contrast in everything or have a monotone life. You know, there's no way to get around contrast in the human experience. It can't be done. It can't be done. You have to have rainy days to appreciate sunny days. And relationships are no exception. It's just that relationships are particularly painful because they include matters of the heart. And the heart is just a real challenge. It's a real challenge to recover and heal the heart a lot of the times, more than other areas. You know, people struggle dealing with heart stuff, and I completely understand. You know, my original wounding is very heart-based. You know, it's about my entire existence is where my wounding lives. So heart stuff is absolutely terrifying. And it's something where I'm sure many of you can relate to this, but a lot of my systems that exist within me are designed to avoid relationships because I want to avoid grief at all costs, avoid betrayal at all costs, avoid hurt at all costs, avoid, so that I don't have to experience any contrast in relationships. No, thank you. But the issue is that it's cripplingly lonely. So that's something that obviously isn't sustainable. That's not something that can really go on forever, which means that the only path out is to take risks. And yes, that means risking a breakup. That's ultimately how this works. Like, there's no way to get around that. And the same thing goes for if you are dealing with a breakup, if you are evolving out of a relationship that no longer serves you, if you are in the middle of a breakup or needing to move on from somebody, it's like there are certain times and certain reasons why we just have to go through the grieving process. It just has to be done. And as I always say, you know, there are people who don't. There are people who don't. I mean, I had a grandmother who, you know, lost her husband, I think in like her early 50s, never dated again, never moved on from that relationship and held on to that grief until she died. You know, that was something that, although she wasn't able to process emotions really, she didn't know how to regulate or manage her emotions. It was quite sad. But there are people who do not move on. And that is a reality that some people ultimately choose, right? Like, that was always her choice to not move on, not put herself out there, not heal her wounds. Like, that, she just chose that. And breakups are a real bitch, honestly. Like, there's no other way to put it out there. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with all of this. I'm just kind of riffing on whatever is coming to mind. But if we can at least understand that there might be a bigger reason, or there might be something better, or there might be divine support at play, it's not going to wipe away the grief. It's not going to wipe away the pain. The pain is a necessary part of the process. Again, we go back into contrast. The way that happy, satisfying, fulfilling long-term relationships exist, breakups also have to exist. They exist on the same spectrum, right? We can't have one without the other. We can't have commitment without, betrayal. We can't have goodness without badness. Like these things have to exist all at the same time. We can't have togetherness without separation. It simply can't be done on earth. And I find that there is some comfort in my own pain when I remind myself that even if I'm frustrated or pissed off with God that I'm having to deal with discomfort, or if I am having to let go of a relationship that I don't want to, or if things are falling apart, one of the things that I have found to be really helpful is knowing my own ability to move forward and understanding that within myself, the contrast will help me. The same way it might be knocking me down and pushing me over, and all of the wounding that comes up with that, right? This isn't fair. This doesn't feel good. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be in this position. I don't want to let go of the things that I love. I don't want to evolve. Fuck that. Like there is so much resistance that happens when we're in pain, right? It's hard to just relax into acceptance when you're in pain, because there's so much of us that desperately wants to avoid, that desperately wants to get out of pain. And it can make the breakup process just awful, right? Because it's like you're resisting the grief, you're resisting the pain, you're resisting the separation, you're fighting like hell to not experience any type of disruption or pain at all. And that's damn near impossible. So it's like, sure, you can numb it. Like you could get really fucked up on drugs or whatever, numbing behaviors you have. But again, that's not actually going to fix it. That's not actually going to repair anything. That's going to dull the pain for a short time. It's going to trash your body, and then you're going to wake up with the same issue. So it's one of those things that is absolutely inescapable, or you can run from it as long as you can. But at the end of the day, we all have to come into acceptance of having a human experience, which means that we've signed up and we are on the planet and we have to deal with duality. It's just the way it goes. So reminding myself that the same way things may have gone from good to bad, like I may have had a streak of good days and then all of a sudden got hit with a bad day, the opposite is also true. So I might be down in the dumps right now, but there's always that flip. There will always be the switch where things can evolve in the opposite direction, and all of a sudden things can pick up and things can get better, and I can experience ecstasy again. I can experience joy again, because that's how this works. Like I've experienced so much pain and so much hurt and so much agony at this point in my life that is just something that has always existed, that I know contrasts so well. I know good days so well. I know that these things do resurface, and that for every bad day, there's also a good day ahead. And the more I try to fight pain and resist pain, the longer I'm going to drag it out. And so the only way to move through it is allowing yourself to fall apart, essentially, and be an acceptance of the pain. And honestly, one of the things, and my therapist has reflected this back to me many times, but one of the reasons why I luckily did not struggle with addiction in this lifetime is because I'm really good with pain. Just really good at, I hate to say this, being in acceptance of the discomfort. And the more that you practice this, the easier you'll be able to move through it. And all of the people in my life will tell you, like, there are days when I'm like, I am sick of this. I do not want to deal with these feelings. I don't want to confront this. I don't want bad news. I don't want contrast. This is ridiculous. I don't want to deal with any of this. And I get into that zone too. I experience all facets of this as well. And at the end of the day, I just have to come back to this will transform the same way everything else in my life has transformed. So that's what lets me rest easy at night, knowing that things change, and things can change very, very quickly if you're keeping your eyes peeled. So let me just say to those of you who are going through breakups or struggling or just having a real shit time in relationships or needing to move on, know that none of this is permanent. And if we're getting real metaphysical, like if this helps, I don't know if it will. I think some of you are going to roll your eyes and others of you are going to find comfort in it. But it's kind of like, look, we're all just going to end up going back to source anyway at the end of the day. You know, we're all going to die. We're all going to leave our bodies at some point. And so, I mean, this all comes to an end. So you may as well play big. And that includes with matters of the heart. It just does. So, you know, don't hide from love the way that I have for many years. Don't do that, even if it kills you, seemingly. And also have enough self-awareness to where you know your patterns and you get a clue when God is telling you, hey, something needs to change here. Don't shy away from that either. Just lean into life. Please do yourself a favor and lean into the pain, lean into the joy, lean into all of the good things, and lean into the discomfort as well. And it will just make things a lot easier for you, because it's like if you kick and scream, the only way that you can really get through it is if you just relax and, you know, eat a snack, take a nap, and just keep moving through it, right? Each and every one of us has our own challenges and struggles and, you know, relationships that haven't worked out, or pain that has come from relationships, or when we've put our heart on the line. And there's just so much, and life is really complicated. So I promise you that relationships are something that can be mastered. It's not something where it's inevitably going to result in a breakup every time. Through work, self-awareness, and not holding on so tightly out of desperation, that's really how you're going to be able to loosen up and enjoy relationships rather than either white-knuckling them or, you know, continuing to have the same pattern time and time again. That's oversimplified, but I just can't speak to every single situation out there. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the I almost said timeline like I was doing a tarot reading. Let's get into the Q&A. Okay, so here's the first one. How do you move through the body energetically quickly and efficiently with breakups? For me, I typically get through it with my mental body quickly, but breakups traumatize my physical body, and it holds on to that for some time. And what this sounds like to me is like you can get into acceptance mentally of the breakup, but the body is what has a hard time, and I'll explain why. When it comes to attachment, remember this starts with your parents or caretakers. Whoever you attach to, if there was ever a rupture, if there was ever separation or a breakup, that means death. So it's not just something that people are making up when they say, I feel like I'm dying in this breakup, because for the infant self, right, the part of you that originally learned how to attach, when that goes away, your body is being traumatized. It is a massive rupture. It is something that essentially feels like death, because that's what the body is experiencing it as. And this is something that I don't think you're going to be able to bypass. I don't think you're going to be able to meditate your way out of pain. You know, I wish we could just meditate our way out of pain of breakups, but the reality is that you have to let your body do its thing. Like, you have to let your body either shake, cry, experience the physical pain that goes along with breakups, and just feeling and allowing your body to do what it needs to do. And then I would say in times of breakups, that's also when you want to really lick your wounds and just recoup, allow yourself the opportunity to heal through lots and lots and lots of self-care. Now, in the beginning, it might not look the way you would normally think, but it might just be saying no to social events, right? If you're needing more time solo, if you do need to isolate, I don't actually think that's bad. I think some people might disagree with me on that, but I don't think that taking some time to mourn the way you would anything else is bad. Like the same way that you would mourn an actual person, mourning a relationship is real. And allowing yourself to kind of ride the waves of grief, because there are going to be days, early on at least, when you might have a good day where you feel like you're a little bit in higher spirits and you're feeling okay, and then it can have a whole other wave that comes up in the body. And again, listening to your body's process is going to help you move through it faster than saying, no, body, this is inconvenient for me, I don't have time for this. Because like I said, you can kick and scream, fight and resist, but until you just allow yourself to fall apart, it's not actually going to get out of the body. Now, the second part of this question is, I was celibate for 2 years and out of that relationship for months prior, but even to this day, I have struggles with that particular breakup. So I think this goes back to, and I've said this many times, it's a quality issue. So if you're really stuck on a relationship, 9 times out of 10, I've never heard this not be the case, but, I'm all for there being exceptions. But a lot of the time, if you've experienced a really high quality relationship where it was like the best you've ever had or the best you've ever experienced, and then you have to grieve that relationship and you have to mourn that, then it's something where moving forward, you're going to miss that relationship until you find something better, right? I think it's really unrealistic to say, oh, we're never going to think about the people that we love ever again, or we're never going to miss that relationship ever again. That's really shallow. That's just not the way this works. And so I don't actually think it's bad if you can't fully let go of a relationship. I think it just means that you haven't found someone or a relationship of the same caliber, and so it's hard to let go of that quality issue. And as soon as you find someone of a comparable quality, it won't be as hard. At least this is what I've found. And I was stuck on somebody that I was never even in a formal relationship with, even though we, were intimate in all varieties, but the actual label and relationship didn't exist. But I could not get over that for like 6 years. And it wasn't until the introduction of someone better that I kind of woke up and was like, oh, he wasn't the only one who could give me that type of quality connection. It wasn't the only one. And so when you're able to find quality elsewhere, when you're able to find high quality chemistry, high quality love, high quality connection, you're not going to feel so stuck. So instead of looking at it as I'm stuck on that relationship, I would flip it around and just say, I know what I need my standard to be in order for me to say yes to the next relationship. And that is going to help you a lot, because don't resist the fact that you miss that relationship. That's okay. I miss certain relationships in my life, and I know what my quality standards are too, but I'm not, beating myself up over knowing what my limits and requirements are just because I've experienced high quality stuff. So I hope that makes sense. What is the best way to heal from friend breakups? Sometimes I miss them even though they're toxic as fuck. Okay, so When it comes to friendships, I don't feel like I'm the best person to be giving insight on this, but I would say that one of the things that you can do is just accept that you miss them, right? Like you might miss the community, the connection, the fun that you may have had. There's tons of things in friendships that are mournable and that you can miss. Like, don't beat yourself up for that. But it's also focus on the upgrade, right? Don't suppress the feelings, don't ignore the feelings, but also understand that if you had toxic friends, it's okay to miss the good parts of that, but know that only better friends are on the way. Like, you're only going to upgrade from here on out. And so you can kind of rest easy in knowing that it's just going to get better and better and better because you're going to intentionally call in these people. You're not going to throw a Hail Mary, and you are going to ask for healthy friends, or you're going to set the intention for high quality friends that are even better than what you've experienced before. So it's similar to the last question in the quality sense. I think focusing on quality is what can really help you move forward and get excited about what's to come rather than exclusively holding on to what has passed. How do you not stay stuck afterwards and then stop dating altogether? Well, I don't think taking a break from dating or stopping dating for some time is necessarily bad, but because relationships are there's such a core desire of people, I don't think that it's really realistic to say, oh, I'm never going to date again. Because what I've found is that you might say that for some time, but then you're going to get so uncomfortable that you have no choice but to start dating again. So it's like, if you're like, nope, I don't want to date at all, I would say, okay, we'll see. Like, just wait. It's not like you're going to stop dating forever if what you ultimately want, like the desire of your heart, is a loving relationship. The resistance to pain is not going to override the pursuit of pleasure in the end. And this is a loop that I've experienced where it's like I talk myself out of being vulnerable, out of fear of getting hurt. And so then that keeps me alone, but then I come back to, well, my God, I don't want this to actually be my reality, so I have to do something different. And you can only stay on that loop for so long before you put your heart on the line at some point, or you have to take a risk at some point. So it's kind of like you can, even giving yourself permission, like, fine, I'm not going to date. I'm deciding I'm not going to date. You can say that. I wouldn't actually be afraid of that because I don't think you're going to last for as long as you think you will. And at the end of the day, you're going to end up wanting to pursue relationships again if that's what your heart wants. So I don't think that it's as big of a deal as you might be making it in your mind, because I think you're going to override the avoidance. How to fully let go of something after it's been a long time. I don't actually believe in letting go. I straight up don't. I think there's being an acceptance. You can be an acceptance of how things are. But this idea that letting go is some magical thing where you never think about that person again, that's a crock of shit. That's never going to happen. I think about pretty much everyone I've dated from time to time. People come to mind, or I miss certain things, or, I have memories come up, and the pain of that subsides. The pain of that goes away, but it's like you have to really figure out, what does letting go mean? Because a lot of the time people's expectations of what letting go is are completely unrealistic. And I don't think that you should focus on letting go. I think you should focus on moving forward into something better. Because the simple fact is that you're going to have memories, you're going to miss things, you're going to be in that space. That's just the reality. And it could even be that you miss certain things, even getting into like a stellar, awesome relationship, like that's not actually wrong. So I think that people have funky definitions of what letting go and moving on really looks like. But I'm just coming from the standpoint of brains are brains. You're going to miss and remember what you miss and remember. And that doesn't mean that there's like more letting go to do. How to get rid of soul ties. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by this. I'm not sure if you mean cords, in which case you can just remove them. I've shown you guys that a whole bunch of times. A lot of you probably know how I do that and my thoughts on that. Some people call it cord cutting. I do not cut cords. I remove them. So don't visually or physically try cutting cords. You want to gently pull. I'm not sure if you're talking about a karmic agreement or like a healing agreement or a contract, if that's what you mean by soul ties. I'm not sure if you mean retrieving your energy from the other person, in which case a golden sun would do the trick. I have that video on my TikTok and Instagram if you're wanting to find that. So I'm not sure what you mean, because there's a whole bunch of different ways that we share energy and a whole bunch of different ways that we can retrieve that and get that back. So I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just like which modality makes sense for you. Why do breakups happen? As I said, either there's a massive rupture or like something that you can't really come back from in a relationship, like the rupture so big it can't be repaired or healed, or you outgrow the container itself and you're kind of on a dysfunctional loop that isn't getting resolved, or staying in the relationship would prevent you from reaching your full potential. Those are some reasons why I think breakups happen a lot of the time. What is the best way to energetically detach yourself from your ex? Time, space, and distance. Don't stalk their social media. Do not reach out to them 50,000 times. Do not drag out conversations. Don't go back to them. Do not answer phone calls. Time, space, and distance. The practical stuff is going to be the best way to energetically detach. It is not magic. It's just all of the stuff that people don't want to do. Time, space, and distance. That is the best way. I am not one of those people who's like, oh yeah, we can be friends after we break up. No, I don't think that that's smart or wise. I think that giving yourself adequate time, space, and distance is how you're going to best detach from a relationship. How do I handle people who believed my narcissist ex's smear campaign against me? I would just say to the people, if they're actually believing what your ex has to say, I'm one of those people where I'm not really interested in defending myself. So it's like, if you believe what my ex has to say, I'm not gonna try to like fight and scrap my way into convincing you otherwise. If that's what you believe, that's your choice. I know the truth of what's going on, and I'm gonna stand in my integrity, but I'm not going to like flounder around and try to like convince everybody to be on my side. I don't actually think that's wise to spend energy on. And the reason being is that I really do think your people are going to be your people, and anyone who is easily swayed against you rather than coming to you for the truth is not a healthy person. So I don't think you really need to worry about the people who are just buying into what your ex has to say, because your true friends, the people that are best for you, are going to come to you and ask like, hey, what's going on with this? You know, what's the deal with what's happening between the two of you? Or I heard some weird things and I just want to get your side of the story. A real friend is going to do that for you, and they're going to want to know what you have to say, and they're going to want to know your side of the story. A bullshit friend is going to just buy whatever they hear and not give you a second thought. And that's just my 2 cents on it. So there's no handling people. It's just being in acceptance of your people are going to be your people, and your people are going to stay on your side and give you the benefit of the doubt and listen to you. And that's that. He broke my heart 5 years ago, and I haven't been able to truly love again. How to overcome this? Small vulnerabilities, small risks, small steps. I don't think it's like you have to do a 180. I think it's just about practice. Overcoming is not like, oh, I make one decision or I do one thing that's going to overcome and then I'm going to be healed. Like, there's no magic pill. It's constant repeated exposure to vulnerability and having data or enough data to where your heart feels safe enough to relax. And then that is what ultimately allows you to overcome it. But it's repeated decisions over and over and over again. What is one thing which can avoid breakups between couples? Well, first, let me just say, I don't think it's a good idea to go into a relationship with the intention of, we need to avoid a breakup. That is just a recipe for disaster if you're going in and that's your perspective. Instead, you really do want to focus on building, growth, mutual healing, mutual benefit, mutual evolution. And that's going to, like, if you put the growth first, it's going to be better for everybody involved. If you put fear of breakups first, well, then you're coming from a desperate, misaligned place, and that's probably going to make you break up faster. But from more of a practical level, like what people can do to stay in a healthy relationship, I would say do your work, do your healing, focus on your own shit, right? Do your side of things. Don't assume that your partner is your enemy. Assume they are your teammate and they want to work with you. Go into every bit of conflict with a can-do problem solver attitude rather than fingers pointing, blaming, and accusations. And that is going to make a world of difference. I would also say treat relationships like a plant. If you stop watering them, then they will die. You need to nurture them. You need to tend the garden of a relationship. You can't just set it and forget it. That's not going to work. Address resentments immediately. That is definitely something that I would say. Don't let something bubble up for 10 months. Speak up about it immediately. Also, don't assume that your partner is telepathic. You have to train your partner, like, with what you do or don't like. I mean, what makes you feel nurtured and supported, what it is that the relationship can provide or what the teamwork can really provide. It's a team effort. So it's something where if you go into it assuming that they already know everything and they have all the answers already and they know exactly how things should be with you, you're gonna fail. Like that's a losing strategy. So instead, go in with an open mind of, okay, there are some things that my partner isn't going to know and that I'm going to have to communicate. And that can also save you a lot of grief and resentment as well. I could go on and on with this list, but you get the gist. It's like, go into it knowing that if both people are healthy, it's going to be a team effort. It's going to be something where it's buildable and it's workable, and both people are going to be motivated to get answers, get clarity, get the healing that they need, and work together. It's like you're not enemies, and that's the main thing that I would say. All right, everybody, that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And yeah, that's all that I've got. But for those of you who have been wanting to work with me, do not forget I have a la carte clearings. They're available now to everybody. Go to onyxhealing.com/when to book your a la carte clearing. It is a 10-minute session with me. Yes, you will get me over the phone or on Zoom, and we can do a little bit of energetic work, get you tuned up, and clear you of any parasitic attachments you might have, resolve any blocks that might be getting in the way, make your life a little bit easier. And these are only offered once each quarter, so put yourself on the books. Do it. And I will talk to you all next time. Have a beautiful week, everybody, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.